Welcome, everybody. Welcome to day 3. This has been such an amazing experience so far, and I'm so excited for our two powerhouses plus our amazing hostess to bring things full circle today as we come to our third of the 3 days of exploring and reclaiming our exiled parts. Today, we are going to really be trying to focusing on that reclaiming element along with the integration so that we could live in alignment with our soul's mission and what we are here to achieve. So just a few small reminders. Please feel free to use the chat box to communicate. We will try when possible to integrate any questions or comments. However, please know that we are not officially integrating a Q&A session. So we will do our best to integrate at the end when Rabbi or Reed Esther speaks with whoever our guest speaker is to try to bring in whatever topics were brought up in the chat box, but please feel free to use it to send reinforced messages or to ask any questions that our entire Or Emuna team can try to help answer to the best of our abilities. Number 2, if for any reason any of our amazing Israeli participants and or speakers need to find themselves going to a much safer place, please do that. And we will do our best. Yael, myself, and the rest of our team will still be here trying to keep everything afloat until everyone is able to return. We
Well,
do
yeah,
have
Elle is actually in Israel too, so yeah, Elle might be running for
Oh,
the
that's
room as
true.
well.
No, but Jamie's here, and I've got lots of because I've
Rachel
got a whole
Dora,
team.
it's you. You're the one who's going to be able to carry the fort as you always do.
But we're going to make sure that you guys, no matter what, are given the most awesome experience that we can provide, however Hashem determines that is going to be. Last but not least, the recordings are being amalgamated. They are being sent out. Any gifts that our speakers have offered to you are being included in those emails. So please make sure you check your email. It will not be posted on WhatsApp or on social media, the link. It is going to only be sent out via email. That's why we asked everyone to register. And a bonus is that everyone who did participate and register will be getting these recordings a week before they are made public. So you get a little extra time to really sit and bask in it, along with any handouts or gifts that were included from our amazing panel of speakers. So if today is the first day you are joining us, welcome. Thank you. I'm Rachel Dvora. I am part of the Or Emuna team. I am your MC. And I would like, without further ado, to introduce to you our hostess of this amazing event, the wonderful Rabbi Orit Esther. I will go over her bio later this afternoon when I reintroduce her for her speaking slot.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Rachel Dvora. Thank you to the whole Or Emuna team, to Yael, Dr. Yael, and Rachel Dvora, and Gila, and Esty, and Jamie, and the whole Or Emuna platform and staff, all my friends, all my confidants who are here as well. Thank you to all the speakers up until now. Just an absolutely amazing lineup. I'm so excited to have Rabbi Sarah Yehudit. I had the zchut to be able to meet her a couple of weeks ago, not too long ago, actually, Shushan Purim, as I was in the holy presence of her and the beautiful women there and the high court, which she runs magnificently. But yeah, she'll get her due bio read by Rachel Dvora soon. I do want to go over some of the dedications. There actually have been a couple of sponsors that we wanted to make mention of that really in their merit, in their zchut, I want to express my profound personal gratitude to the incredible sponsors who really have been keeping Or Emuna alive. And it's due to their generous support that we have been able to host this amazing summit. I mean, the response has been nonstop. We have close to 2,000 people who have registered to this. I mean, I know they're not everybody's here live, but and the registrations keep coming in, and I'm sure it'll be in the thousands once the recordings come out. But this has been made possible due to sponsorships, due to contributors, due to donors, because it does take a tremendous amount of valuable resources to host such a summit. I see my friend Jamie, my beautiful social media manager, Jamie, who's here. She's fabulous. If anybody needs a social media manager, I'm not sharing her that quickly, but anyway. But really, thank you to all the sponsors. You really are Or Emuna partners. Every woman and man who is experiencing healing in this summit and in general all year round through Or Emuna programs is because of you. Just I want everyone to like really let that sink into their reality. So I want to personally thank, where are my dedications here? I want to personally thank, first of all, the Jaffa family, the Gluck family, the Drelich family. I had a couple of my others, and now I don't see all the other ones that I made mention on the other days, but the Casson family and the Farkas family, and the Bryn family, and the Glaubach family. And I'm sure there's more, but thank you to everyone. And really just tremendous hakaras tov. I do want to give formal introduction to Rachel Dvor, Warmly, who I've been saying this, and I keep saying this because every day I keep saying I have two right hands. I really do. I have two right hands, Rachel Dvor and Dr. Yael, who really are at the forefront of everything that goes on behind closed doors and in front of open doors at Or Emuna. Rachel Dvor Warmly is a certified transformational trauma and somatic life coach. She's also a certified Or Emuna energy practitioner. She comes from a background of athletic therapy, also now called applied kinesiology. She has so many trainings under her belt. I'm just going to name a few: EFT, polyvagal theory, mindfulness, meditations, color therapy, mind body connection. She's a huge advocate, and just a powerhouse from Montreal. I can't wait to be able to teach in Canada. We'll be coming to Canada, God willing, right after Pesach. Be'ezrat Hashem, and just no words, just a virtual and a tremendous hug to you, with all my heart and all my soul. Dr. Yael Maoz, who I love as a human being, as a soul, as just so dedicated to Or Emuna. She's my business, Or Emuna's business and operations manager. She's also a publisher by her own right. She just transforms books into high impact. She has business strategies that have not been seen, and I've worked with many publishers before, but she focuses on publishing impactful books. She also provides a lot of strategic ideas, marketing, and she really ensures that the key points of what the author is trying to bring across really hit home. So, she's just the powerhouse also behind Or Emuna. I want to thank her once again and again, Gila, Esty, Jamie, and so many others who are top contributors to Or Emuna. So without further ado, well, actually, should I make mention of the scientific perspective that I owed from yesterday? Yeah. Okay. Let me just 2 minutes. There's one extra point that I did not make mention of in the past 2 days of this summit. We were talking about exiled emotions. What is the Mishugas that Orit Esther has naming a summit called Reclaiming Exiled Emotions? We spoke about the psychological perspective of what the core idea behind in the psychological framework. What does exiled emotions means? We spoke about the Torah perspective, why, so to speak, not why, but what is the purpose that Hashem, so to speak, brought us into this idea of having to confront with these deep, painful, anguishing emotions, traumas. What is it supposed to take out of us? We spoke about that yesterday. Now I want to just talk about the science just for a minute. And as far as neuroscience, right? Neuroscience explains to us that emotions are very complex, and they actually create a tremendous amount of biochemical processes in the body, that when we have to confront certain emotions, our body actually shifts. And it's all done through different brain regions. It's done through a secretion of hormones. Neurotransmitters begin to light up in the body. And the body actually, when we go through confrontation of different emotions, our body goes through chemical changes. Sometimes the chemical changes start first and the emotions happen. Sometimes the emotions happen and then the body responds in kind. But in any case, there's a true magnificent relationship between mind, heart, right, soul, and body. So the scientific perspective of what happens when you exile emotions, what actually happens? What happens is the neocortex, right, your cognitive thinking, right, the executive functioning of your brain actually is in charge of telling your amygdala, which is the part of the brain that's in charge of your emotional experience, shut down. And that actually impairs the functioning of your brain system. So we have to understand that it's not just shutting down your emotions. You actually physically can experience cognitive brain fog, memory, issues, ADDs. All of that is happening because we suppress our emotions. Sometimes even the joy that we want to burst out and sing, we stop ourselves. So when we exile them, we have to understand that there are consequences to this sort of behavior, and then there's an influx, an increase of stress hormones. The immune function is compromised. We're at a higher risk of chronic diseases. It can cause, like I said before, cognitive dysfunction. People have a hard time making decisions. We have to understand that this has a huge impact on us. So what's the answer scientifically? Even the scientists say meditation, mindfulness, facing all that which you don't want to face without judgment. Don't go ahead and try to suppress it or explain it. Just acknowledge it. Just by becoming aware of what it is that you're feeling and not hiding, not exiling it, but redeeming it and knowing that it has something to teach you about you. You've had the greatest amount of light is found in those klipas, those husks that hold your emotions that you don't want to face. So the idea of this summit, and with that, I'm going to move over and bring the mic to Rachel Dvora. The idea is to release those emotional blockages. And the reason is that when we acknowledge, we are able to integrate, right? When you face your pain, you're able to heal your pain. And so we have to learn how to work with our emotions. And that's what our fabulous lineup of speakers are teaching us: how to recognize them, how to discern them, and then how to redeem and allow that to become the greatest parts of self as we head towards Pesach. But really, this summit is for every moment of your life, right? So with that, I'm moving the microphone over. And I'm so honored to have Rabbi Tzensara Yehudit speak. I can't wait. I'm salivating to just hear what she has to say. And thank you so much. Without further ado. So where are we holding in time?
He's on his way in. I don't know if he's made it in just yet, but I do
Ella, is he
know
here
that.
yet? You can unmute. Is he here? He's here. Ah,
Oh,
very nice.
fantastic.
Okay, I don't know where he is, but
I
I'm
see
sure.
him.
Ah, here he
Yep.
is. Here you are. Okay, so I'm gonna give the microphone over to you, Rachel Dvora, to introduce Rabbi Joey, who I personally am just so fond of his deep, enriching Torah. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for Rabbi Joey. Okay, I'm moving aside. Thank you.
Excellent. So, Rabbi Joey Rosenfeld, LCSW, is a practicing psychotherapist specializing in the philosophy, spirituality, and psychology of addiction, where he attempts to uncover the philosophical themes underlying this phenomenon in all of its facets. As a well-known speaker, lecturer, and thought leader, Rabbi Rosenfeld frequently grafts together the threads of seemingly disparate thoughts on Kabbalistic psychology and continental philosophy. While he does that, he's helping to create new constellations of thinkers and groups around the world. He's currently writing a monograph on the teachings of Rav Yitzchak Meir Morgenstern Shlita, and Rabbi Rosenfeld's online series on Jewish philosophy, Kabbalah, and the human soul has attracted not only a global audience, but a most dedicated following. Thank you so much for being here with us, Rabbi Rosenfeld, and we are so excited to hear from you.
Okay, thank you so much. And it's a real treat to be here. Can you guys hear me just by, okay, amazing. And so it's a real slice to be back with Rebbitzin Orit, Esther Reader, and the Or Emuna, and the whole process of this emergent redemption. There's an emergent redemption that is perpetually ascending from below to above, and it takes shape by way of Mayin Nukvim, feminine waters, which belong to both men and women. And it's an awakening that takes place from within the vessel itself. For the entirety of history, the light has been in search of a vessel, and light has been revealed and revealed and revealed and revealed in search of vessels. But they say in the name of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zchus Yogan Aleinu, that prior to the coming of Mashiach, most of the work is now going to be in Kalim. Most of the work is going to be from the side of the receptacle, from the vessel itself. And what I believe that means is the awakening desire from below for Ratzon Hashem, for Devar Hashem, for the most illuminative teachings, the most potent teachings that is part and parcel of our own tradition and is necessary. There's two elements that take place towards the end of history when it comes to the revelation of the secrets of Torah for everybody. Number one is the fact that it's representative of a future ideal where everything is revealed and there's no more concealment, and each and every person has the capacity of beholding Hashem through their own heart. But at the same point, and the tzaddikim also spoke to this point, it's urgent. There's no other way to get through. That the mashal of the tzaddikim, that there will come a time where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to shake the rope so intensely that the only way to hold on to it is going to be by way of faith. And that rope is being shook and it's being shaken. And the amount of suffering and difficulty and concealment and struggle, both individually, collectively, globally, community-wise, each and every person, wherever you look, a person sees a world that is filled with pain. Now, this is nothing new, necessarily. Since the creation of the world, there's been pain. It can be questioned whether the pain is more acute in its quantity. It certainly feels more acute in its quantity and quality, but there's a level of suffering within ourselves, within the world, that feels unbearable. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is makdim refuah lamakeh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepared the medicine prior to the illness. And one of the ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepared the medicine was that there's two ways of facing a breakdown of self. There's two ways of facing an exile of the self, and a disconfiguration and a separation and a splintering and all of the various metaphors, and each one means a different thing. There's the way of ignoring it and suppressing it and repressing it, which history has shown us very well, that Freud's general principle that what is repressed will return eventually one way or the other, that's proven true. And so we have learned, hopefully by way of history, that we cannot ignore the struggle. We cannot pretend it doesn't exist. We cannot pretend that the fragmentation has not taken place. We cannot pretend that things have not shattered and broken apart into a million little pieces. That's not the medicine. The medicine is that Panemius HaTorah gives us the ability to look at, to process, and to grow through that process of shattering. The wisdom of Panemius HaTorah is a wisdom of shattering. It's a wisdom of a breakdown. The entire teachings of the Arizal, which is a reflection of the teachings of the Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai, which are a reflection of the teachings of Moshe, are ultimately insights as to how to deal with the breakdown that takes place in human consciousness, in human emotionality, in history, and across the board of being human. The Torah was given to human beings, and therefore the secrets of the Torah are most certainly given to the human beings. And they are there by absolute necessity, because without them we can't survive. Now, what is it that Panemius HaTorah is teaching us? Panemius HaTorah teaches us that when things break, when things fall apart, we can't pretend it didn't happen. We have to go into the brokenness. We have to descend down into those parts that seem to have fragmented, into those parts which now seem alienated from us, those parts of ourselves that we don't want to deal with, that we're ashamed by, that we're embarrassed of, that the idealism inherent with them is too strong, or they represent too low of a point in our lives. We have to first and foremost overcome the tendency to not want to look at it. And we have to understand that we have a koach to look. We have a koach to be moded with reality. We have the strength to deal with reality. As they say in the rooms of 12-step programs, that ultimately the goal of any path in recovery is the capacity to live life on life's terms, which means to gaze unflinchingly at life, which means not to forget about the brokenness, not to pretend that the brokenness doesn't exist, but to wade very delicately into it with confidence that we will come out the other side whole. It might be a wholeness that looks very different than our original expectation of a seamless unity, that state of mind prior to the shattering. But the confidence that the soul has to go down into the brokenness with is that I will come out stronger and more whole as a result of processing through this concealment and through this shattering. It might be referred to as post-traumatic growth, but we see it in every element of Pnimius HaTorah. There is breakdown that leads to breakthrough. There is a shattering that leads to a building. There is a chaos that leads to rectification. There is darkness that gives way to light. There is trauma that gives way to learning to survive and cope through trauma itself. The entirety of existence and human life as a reflection of existence is simply the opportunity to force the individual to come to realize that we can do more than what we feel we can do. We can survive more than what we feel we can survive. Pnimius HaTorah has expressed itself in various ways. It starts with Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu gives us the Aleph Beis. There's nothing more secret, more hidden, more real, more explosive, more nuclear than the Aleph Beis itself. Everything in the end of the day comes back to the Aleph Beis, the building blocks of reality, the building blocks of day-to-day experience. Those are the letters of Moshe. And then Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came along to reveal that hidden within those building blocks of letters is hidden a profound mystery world, which is the world of the cave, the world of the Zohar. That world of hidden concealment and receptivity and loving kindness and wandering together on empty roads in the night sky in northern Eretz Yisrael, pondering the secrets of reality. And then the world of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai gets translated into another illuminative point in the process of the revelation of the tzaddikim, which was the Arizal. The Arizal sitting on the banks of the Nile River. The Arizal was not sitting in Yerushalayim. The Arizal was born in Yerushalayim, exiled from Yerushalayim into Egypt. And in Egypt, as he was sitting on the banks of the Nile River, he beheld an understanding of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how God created the world, the processes through which God created the world. Now let's pause by the Arizal's metaphors for a moment, because this is going to be a very important step in properly understanding what the Baal Shem Tov did for us. The secret of the medicine that preceded the sickness, which is the light of the Baal Shem Tov. The Arizal asked the simple question. God is infinite in all manners of infinitude. God is without measure. God is without limitation. God is without separation. God is without complication. God is without division. God was without graspability. There's a fundamental and utter infinite unity that is ever present and ungraspable to the mind's eye, which is the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's everywhere revealed. It surrounds all worlds. It fills all worlds. And in truth, there's nothing other than God. The question then is, how do we get from that place to the low and sunken, broken place that we find ourselves in? If God is infinite and God is all powerful and God is infinite beyond all measures of infinitude and it's everything good and right beyond capacity of grasp, and how is it that we can be sitting in this world where suffering abounds and where, like Rav Yerucham Levavitz of Mir said, that God didn't create a world, God created a hospital. God created a big hospital. Why did God create a big hospital? He could have created the world as anything that he liked. God created a hospital so that we can learn the secret of having compassion on one another, how to empathize and to share in the human experience and to realize that each and every one of us are human together in trying to understand Hashem's plan in this world. And so the Arizal comes to answer this question. How is it that the infinite light of God, in all of its simplicity, exists at the same time that finite separation takes place? That this world, in all of its thickness, and all of our physiological feelings, and all of our emotional feelings, and all of the splinteredness on the levels of emotions, our cognitive distortions, the stuckness that we encounter in our lives. How is it that all of this continues to exist with the infinite light of God? And the Arizal came to give us the equation of how that's possible, to give us the way that the infinite reveals itself to the finite. And you would think that if someone's describing a grand mystical narrative, that would be beautiful metaphors. That the Arizal would now tell us about the wondrous way in which Hashem decides to share his light with the world. But instead, what we encounter in the writings of the Arizal is first and foremost tzimtzum, an act of contraction, the primordial act of contraction where God, so to speak, had to remove and reduce and conceal and hide away his infinite light so that there can be something other than God. And that otherness that God that emerges where God was is the empty space. So that's the first thing we encounter, that God leaves the scene, so to speak. It seems at first glance that Hashem removes himself in order to reveal himself. Then at the next stage of the metaphors of the Arizal, we find something else. If it weren't bad enough that God had to hide himself, and now we find ourselves in a world where it seems that God is hidden, and we feel like Esther Amalka, Keli, Keli, Lama Azavtani, why do you forsake me? To add insult onto injury, the next stage of creation, where Hashem sends his lights down so that they can be received in vessels, that also doesn't work out. And it's a cataclysmic shattering and a traumatic breaking of the vessels, where all of those original nice vessels that we assumed would be ideals, they break apart and they fall down. And the post-traumatic symptoms of the original plan seem to be what creates our existence. So suddenly we're encountering this light of the Arizal, and we're finding very severe metaphors of breakdown and a shattering and an original whole of unity that now gets splintered into all different forms of separation and disunity. And not only that, the Arizal's name is Yitzchak, which represents Din and Gvura. So what's going on here? The secret of what's coming out of the Arizal's teachings is that anytime that something breaks, it's not breaking. Anytime something appears to fall apart, it's not actually falling apart. It's just expanding itself into many, many more expressions of itself. We tend to look at a breaking as a fracture, where there's original whole that gets broken apart and it shatters into a million different pieces. There's fragments everywhere. But the secret of Kabbalah and the secret of Pnimiyas HaTorah is that we're not looking at fragments. We're looking at fractals. There was a very, very, very important scientific intervention that took place around the time of quantum physics, where a Jewish thinker developed an idea called fractals. Fractals mean that, let's say, for example, you have a hologram. You have a holographic piece of glass that has a whole image on it. Now, at first glance, it appears that there's one whole image, and if you were to break it, that each and every part of that original whole would now only have a small piece of it. But by way of the secret of holographic imaging, if you shatter a piece of glass that was a hologram and it breaks into 20 pieces, instead of finding 20 different shards of glass with none of them containing the image anymore, what you come to find is that each and every shard of glass, no matter how small, contains within itself the entirety of the image that was originally shown onto the picture. That the holographic unity reveals that each and every part that appears when something breaks apart is not just a broken piece of something, but it's a revelation of that thing in a smaller, miniature way. And that in truth, there is nothing in this world that does not contain the infinite light of God in it. And there is nothing in this world, no experience in this world, no encounter with any emotion in this world that doesn't hold the capacity to provide me with every imaginable spiritual insight and spiritual pleasure that I so desire if I am willing to dig down deep into the moment itself enough. Pnimiyas HaTorah tells us of traumas and it tells us of post-traumatic struggle, but it's a very important shift in thinking. The original whole doesn't break into a million small broken pieces that are meaningless. The original whole breaks into a million small expressions of itself. And this is what the Baal Shem Tov came to teach us. There are two stories that I want to share, because if I'm understanding timing correctly, so I'll speak for probably 10 more minutes or so, 12 more minutes, and then there'll be some questions. But there's a story told about the Baal Shem Tov, because the Baal Shem Tov, what was the Baal Shem Tov in relationship to the Arizal? We don't have the Baal Shem Tov without the Arizal. A person doesn't have to know everything about the Arizal because the Baal Shem Tov gives us all of that, but we cannot pretend that the Baal Shem Tov comes from any place other than the Arizal himself. The moment we cut the Baal Shem Tov away from the Arizal is the moment we're not talking about Jewish spirituality anymore. Again, a person does not have to be a Kabbalist. The Baal Shem Tov did that for us. The students of the Baal Shem Tov did that. The Baal HaTanya, the Rabbi Nachman, all of their spouses, their wives, their daughters, they already lived that light of drawing Kabbalah into lived experience. But we have to be aware that there was an Arizal. There's a scientific map that gives reason to why we're able to utilize all of these defense mechanisms, because otherwise we're just talking about positive thinking, CBT, mindfulness, etc. All of those are wonderful tools. But what Hasidus does for us is it offers us wonderful tools of coping. And not only do those tools help, but they're also giving me access to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a very real way. They also enable Dveikus. And that's because the Baal Shem Tov was giving us the words of the Arizal. There was a story of a tzaddik who had a child who was very ill. And they went to all of the tzaddikim of the time to try and help this child until they brought the Baal Shem Tov in. And the Baal Shem Tov looked at the child and he said, "Do you know who I am?" And the child said, "Yes, you're the Arizal." And the Baal Shem Tov said, "Okay, so he's going to have a refuah shalema." And so we have to remember the Arizal, because when we go into the Baal Shem Tov, now when we think about all of these ideas, we know that they are based on real scientific information, the science of how Hashem reveals himself. Thinking about our lives through this shift in thinking, anytime we go through a breakdown, instead of looking at our situation as I had an original plan of how I wanted things to go, and now it's broken and shattered into a million pieces, and I have to give up on my plan, and I have to be frustrated at everybody who caused me to not be able to accomplish my plan. And even though I'm going to try and forgive, I'm going to hold on to all of the hidden resentments that make me feel that I wasn't able to accomplish my ideal plan. And those resentments are going to be carried with me, and they're going to turn into depression and anger, and I'm going to become miserable. Because I feel my original plan was broken, and now I'm left with all of these broken pieces that I have to learn how to collect and be happy with. But if I realize that, okay, I have a plan, and now my plan doesn't go the way I want it to go, any moment that I find myself in, any emotional corner that I find myself stuck in, any frustration, any tendency towards anger, any desire to blame, any yearning towards wishing my ideal plan took place, those are not just broken parts of something that was originally whole that are meaningless. Each and every one of those emotional cues and points of response are the new mission. They are whole in and of themselves. They contain the beginning, the middle, and the end of what it means to be a human being in this world. A person never loses out. If my original plan and my ideal has shifted, that means that Hashem feels that there's another ideal. And in these broken plans, I have to be able to find everything that I need in order to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Realizing that when things fall apart, it's not that the whole goes away. It's just that now the whole multiplies itself into tiny little pieces that I have to find and I have to cultivate and I have to be patient with. This gives me the opportunity to encounter God wherever I go. There is no situation that does not contain within itself the potential of all of the light that Hashem wants to reveal. There is no encounter, no matter how short, that is not the beginning, middle, and the end of existence in its own isolated kind of my monastic way. Every moment, every second of my life is a new mission, and everything is there. It's not fragments. There's nothing broken. It's fractals. If I gaze deeply enough at the broken pieces of my life, I will come to find that they hold everything they need, and all I have to do is mindfully engage with what is in front of me at this moment. The Heilige Rebbe Rav Kook says as follows. He says, "B'chol derachecha de'ehu," that in all of your ways you should know him. He quotes David HaMelech, and he says this is a major klal in Avodas Hashem, that whatever a person is doing, at that moment they must lean into it and ignore anything from before and anything after. And everybody knows that Rav Kook did not correct his writing. Rav Kook was a stream of consciousness that expressed itself onto writing. There were a few places where Rav Kook felt the need to add. And in this area where he describes the need to hyper-focus in on each and every moment in its isolation, he adds, why is it that I should only focus on this thing right in front of me? Because theoretically, this thing right in front of me is just a broken piece of some original plan that I had. I should be looking at all of the broken pieces to try and coalesce and recuperate some semblance of a structure. Why should I only focus on what's in front of me? What Rav Kook adds is as follows. The reason that a person should not look elsewhere is kikol ha'olam kulo nikval b'soch oso hanakuda ba'osa arega, that the entirety of existence is folded into that very particular thing that is in front of that person at that moment. Meaning to say, it's not that be happy with what I have. It's be happy because I have the awareness that whatever it is that I have everything. This is the secret of joy. It's Ezehu Ashir HaSameach Bechelko. Who is glad? Who is joyous? One who finds gladness with their lot. Well, who is rich, rather? Who has a mindset of saturation, of enoughness? Someone who is joyous with their part. Chelek means a broken piece. It just means a part. It's partial. Happiness, the Maharal says, is wholeness. So how could it be if wholeness and happiness are identifiable? And then Chazal are telling us that happiness comes by way of being satisfied with the small piece that I get. The secret is that in every small piece that I get, everything is hidden in there. As the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says, "Ha'toifes chelek min ha'etzem, toifes es ha'etzem kulo." Someone who touches even the slightest aspect of the essence is in truth grasping the entirety of the essence, because the essence cannot divide itself. But we see that the essence of God's light divides itself innumerable times throughout reality. It must be that each and every itemized and isolated point of existence contains the entirety of the existence within itself. And this leads us to understand the story that the Baal Shem Tov said. The story goes that the Baal Shem Tov was standing on top of a mountain. And that one of his Talmidim came over to him and said, Rebbe, Ketzad matchilim la'avoid va'avoida sabayra. How does one begin service of the divine? And there was an aliyah samachshava, there was a dream-like state that took place, and what the student saw was that his Rebbe looked at him, open-eyed, and he said like this, and he tossed himself off of the cliff. And he flew down into God knows where. Down, 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 to the point that the Talmud was terrified, horrified. His Rebbe had just thrown himself off the cliff. And he ran down the mountain to see what had become of his Heilige Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov. And upon getting down at the mountain, he sees Rahman al-Itzlan, the Baal Shem Tov, had shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. But upon closer examination, he came to realize that it was not 1,000 different pieces of the Baal Shem Tov. Each and every piece was a tiny Baal Shem Tov. Each and every fragmented expression of the Baal Shem Tov was a full Baal Shem Tov. Meaning to say that the Baal Shem Tov came to show us this teaching, that you have to embrace the fall, embrace the descent away from your original ideal of what you expected your moment or your day or your week or your life or whatever it is to go. Embrace that fall and understand that the whole breaks apart. It does. But don't be afraid. Why shouldn't a person be afraid? Because when you examine the brokenness after the dust has settled, you come to find that it's more whole than before. There is no situation in the world that does not provide me with every ounce of material necessary to be mistavik to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the deepest elements of my mind. Whether I'm in a base medrash, whether I'm in a fight, whether I'm in a struggle, whether I'm in a rut. We're not talking about mental health symptoms that need to be dealt with secondarily and separately prior to diving into spiritual work. Spirituality is not an answer to mental health issues. Very often there's an interface between the two of them, but there is a very real need to identify, determine, discern what is what prior to trying to solve something with a spiritual tool. But the spiritual tools of our lives are ultimately one thing. It's that each and every moment is the entirety of existence, and I can start again each and every moment. And if I miss the last 1,000 or 1,000,000 moments, that says absolutely nothing about this moment in front of me. And that in each and every piece of our broken experiences, we have the ability to find our entire selves. To end with just one more quote that brings this notion a little bit into clarity, the Heilige Rav Kook, again, when he came to Eretz Yisrael, he was intoxicated with a love sickness for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he saw a spiritual world and a religious world which was not aligned with that intoxication. He saw more stability. He saw something that had congealed itself into an ideology, God forbid. And he said, where is the love sickness? Where is the yearning and the burning desire that shatters any notion of limitation? And he saw it in the poetic expression of the youth of the nation, which were trying to find a language for that which they couldn't describe. What they knew is that they didn't want that broken thing that they came from, because they were still operating from the perspective that when something breaks, it's just a fragment and it's no longer whole. And so they were poetically inclined, and Rav Kook wrote to them in beautiful language, and he wrote about them that the door is wondrous, the generation is wondrous, they're holy and they're unholy at once, they're pure and impure at once, not holy and unholy, a Yid is always holy, they're pure and impure at once. They want the greatest ideals and they are stuck in the lowest things. Everyone is confused, but ultimately it comes from a love sickness for God. And Rav Kook was speaking for these neshamos, saying that you just are dissatisfied with the God that you've been taught, but you want more. And they wrote a letter back to Rav Kook and they said, Chvod Harav, we love you very much. You're cool. You're unlike the rabbis we've met in the past, but perhaps you're the one who's torn. You're telling us that we're torn, that we're expressing ourselves poetically, and that we're yearning for wholeness, and that really it's just a misplaced desire to connect to God and all that is unified. Maybe you're the one who wants to come to us and say poetry. Come, say poetry with us. We're not so confused. We're not torn. You're the one who's torn. And what Rav Kook responded was as follows. He says, Misha amar alai shenafshi karua yafa amart. I afshar ledamot lenafshenu shum davar she'ena karua. Rak hadomem shalem. He who said about me that my soul is torn spoke properly, for of course my soul is torn. Everything is torn. It's impossible to conceive of anything that's not torn through and through. Only that which is inanimate is whole. But to be a living and breathing creature means to deal with contradictions and paradoxes. And not even to ever find the place of that synthesis that holds it all together, but to perpetually come to find more and more unifications. And this, Rav Kook says, is the secret of unifying unifications. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov came to teach us how to do. When Mashiach Tzidkenu answered the Baal Shem Tov, when the Baal Shem Tov said, Emasai ka'asimar, when are you going to arrive? When is my master going to arrive? Now we're talking about redeeming fallen feelings. Mar, marirus, is bitterness. Bitterness, tzabrachenkeit, anxiety, the struggle with self, the alienation of the different parts. And so the Baal Shem Tov is also asking, he says, Rahman al-Itzlan, Mashiach, when is the bitterness going to go away? And so he gave him two answers. When the teaching spread forth like water, which Chabad did very, very well. And now in our generation, every sefer, Kamarna, Breslov, there's not a sefer of Hasidus that doesn't have biurim and commentaries and art scroll editions. We live in the golden age of Pnimiyas HaTorah. All is available. Because all we're trying to taste is a piece. If a person were to taste a piece, they would have Tchiyas HaMesim immediately. So we have to throw all of the medicine at us in hopes that we're going to have a piece. But the Baal Shem Tov hears from Mashiach, he says, I'm going to come when it's Kishe'efutzamai and Kishemiyachtim Yechudim Kamaischa, when they perform unifications like you do. And the Baal Shem Tov had a Chalisha Sadas. He said, it's impossible. Until the Baal Shem Tov said, you know what, it's not so impossible. To make a yichud is to encounter separation and to find wholeness there. It's not to deny separation, it's to encounter separation and to gaze at it and to be in it and to stand with it until I find unity and then to walk away from it. Only when I find the unified light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that place can I move away from it. And in that place, we can be Miachid Yechudim like the Baal Shem Tov. We can fix our broken selves, not by trying to create some semblance of unity. There is no unified self. When the Arizal discusses the self, he says, nope, it's Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chayin, Yechida. I'm 5 parts now, and 5 within 5, and 5 within the 5 within the 5. I'm innumerable parts. Of course there's parts to me. And it's in that secret that we come to accept our parts. We accept the whole within each and every part. And then ultimately, a person can live and see their world in their days, every moment. Every conversation, every word is another opportunity to reach upwards and connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Be'ezras Hashem, we should be Zoichet to be Miyachid Yechudim, like Chanuch, who with every stitch of the shoes that he was stitching was being Mechaber and Miyachid Shemaim V'Naaretz. That every ounce of our experience is simply, where is the unity to be found in this contradiction? And Be'ezras Hashem, I mean, you guys are doing it already. I'm just visiting, but you guys are building Kalim and you guys are building the space. And Be'ezras Hashem, you know, we're very close. We're close, and we're gonna get there with Pnimiyas HaTorah, Be'ezras Hashem. Okay.
Amen. Beautiful. Totally beautiful. I wonder what the Rav feels qualifies us in this generation. I know that we've learned this before. What qualifies us as a generation to be to merit 2 things? One, this intense, deep Torah that's coming out from so many teachers like you. And number 2, what qualifies us to merit to be able to take such darkness and transform it into light? Because there's like not just a little darkness, it's pitch dark here. Talk about blinded by the light.
What qualifies us ultimately is that we're alive. We're in this generation, and that's what qualifies us most. This generation is the secret. This generation is the secret. And again, this generation began way before us, and Be'ezras Hashem, it will bring about the redemption Tekef Umiyad. But, you know, generationally speaking, from the time of the Shoah and on, we're still very much in the same blink of history. I don't believe that the tragic events of Eretz Yisrael can be seen outside of the context of the tragic events outside of Eretz Yisrael. We're still in that tekufa. The neshamos of this tekufa that saw utter destruction, those of us who have grandparents or great-grandparents who are survivors, some of us have parents who are survivors, right? To live with the Baal Shem Tov, all of the tzaddikim revealed themselves in order to give us the ability to find Hashem after that, after the new tzimtzum. And we live with that awareness of what happened. We live with the awareness of destruction and hopelessness. And what we're born from is we are the hope that survives hopelessness. We are the etzem haluz of Nishmas Yisrael. We are the fact that we remain is testimony enough to the indestructible nature of the Jewish spirit. That's simply it. Even if all I can do is get out of bed in the morning. The Arizal was asked this very question by Rav Chaim Vital. Rav Tzadok reports it numerous places. Rav Chaim Vital says, "Are you kidding me? Like, we're going to do it, but you couldn't." And the Arizal says, "You're right, but also they didn't have to deal with what you deal with." And so what qualifies us is the fact that we're alive. At this point in time, each and every person, we had the Nesiim who did the work, the Tzaddikim did the work for us. Our job now, we're the Malchus to Malchus with its legs, not only dangling into death, but we're surrounded by death. We're surrounded by concealment upon concealment upon concealment. And the Yetzer Hara acts Meshuggah, and the only way to fight Meshuggah is by being Meshugana. And the only way to be Meshugana b'Kedusha is with Pnimius HaTorah at the highest degree imaginable.
Okay, I'm going to ask a daring question. I feel you are the authority to answer this, and then I want Rachel Dora to ask her questions too. I need to know, as I think it's important as a Torah authority. And if the Rav doesn't feel comfortable, I know I'm putting the Rav on the spot. You said something very interesting right now, and you said we have to be Meshuggah too. Some people take that all the way, and I'm sorry to say, they go into all these trips and take all these psychedelics, and they believe that this shigon is what we're supposed to do, because they feel like that's the elevation that's required from the depths of the downward that they're feeling. And I really want it to become public if the Rav feels comfortable. If not,
I feel very comfortable because I'm biased. My Rabbi Rav Meyer Morgenstern Shlita is very, very, very much against the notion that psychedelics can or should be introduced into Yiddishkeit on any level. That being said, and now I'm not speaking in the name of my Rebbe on any level, but the Lubavitcher Rebbe would also ask this question with regards to LSD in its time. And Svara of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that he expresses in that letter remains true for tzaddikim in our generation as well. Prior to answering the question of whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, what the Lubavitcher Rebbe said is that I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. If it's a medical question, then you have to ask a medical doctor. But from the perspective of anything that's not medical, meaning the spirituality and everything in between, so then the general principle is that this is not the way. Now, one of the major issues of our generation is that the line between medical and spiritual is blurred with the introduction of trauma into the modern conscious conversations, because unfortunately speaking, there's a lot of trauma that is deeply rooted in spirituality, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I'm not, and again, there's no singular brushstroke on any of this, right? I'm not an expert in this field, but ayahuasca is something that's very different than MDMA, and MDMA is something that's very different than ketamine, and ketamine is something that's very different than et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying that there's a distinction to be made necessarily, because unless a person is doing it with professional care and they trust their doctors and the das that goes with their doctors and their religious orientation, so then from a spiritual perspective, it's being too urgent, too eager, too impatient, and it's re-encountering the chait of the Yetz Hadas again. It's where at the entry of Gan Eden, and there's lahat acher of hamasapeches that's rotating, and the anxiety is spinning and spinning and spinning, and we can see the glimmer of Gan Eden we can enter back into, and we want nevuah, and we want shefa, and we want nahar hayotzim Eden, and we want what the soul desires, and we want our natural birthright, which is to be mitaneg b'sha'ashuim, and to take the deepest pleasure in the contemplation of divine principles and dvekus etzem, and ideas that would obliterate any notion of the pleasure that comes with these substances. But the general trajectory of Jewish history is that we have perpetually missed the mark as a result of our impatience, that we take that which is present at hand, ready at hand, and we say, this is it. And unfortunately, the perspective is that if it's being done in a spiritual way, Again, I'm not talking therapeutically and I'm not talking psychologically right now. It's a separate conversation. But from a spiritual perspective, it's dreaming of nevuah. It's getting excited about the possibility of nevuah. It's perceiving the awakening of nevuah. It's perceiving the fact that, yes, as a soul, I should see from one end of the world to the other, which all of us are feeling in one way or another. And then mistaking the last thing that seems to offer that because we're too impatient. When in reality, the thing that we're waiting for, nevuah mamish, is going to be the panim of this, the face of this. Does my answer make
Yeah.
sense?
Well, I happen to, not that in my opinion necessarily matters here, but I happen to be in
Everyone's.
agreement. But if it comes to a medical, we're not talking about that at all. We're talking about, I'm meeting people in my practice and in my world of people who just, I want to go there and I want to experience the answers to my questions. And people are going on these trips.
Yeah,